chips cashed in, keep tracking.
The decade passed a quarter century ago, but the spirit of the 60s lived on in the music of the Grateful Dead and its frontman, Jerry Garcia.
I see, well, a large part of my life I've spent doing something which has turned out to be more fun than I thought it was going to be, and it's lasted way longer than I imagined it might.
They were the last great hippie band, but the Grateful Dead were about much more than music. With their shaggy hair and surrounded by fans in tie-dyed t-shirts, they were the counterculture, still alive in an era of conformity. That energy attracted a cult-like following, so-called deadheads, many of them born long after the 60s ended. They faithfully followed the band to live performances across the continent.
I've seen him like 30 times. I mean, people have seen him like hundreds of times, so I'm just like a baby.
This day is the worst nightmare of any Deadhead. This means most probably the end of the era of the Grateful Dead.
Washington Post journalist Carolyn Ruff was a Deadhead for 7 years, but she quit when she realized that while the band played on, among the Deadheads that cherished 60s values had disappeared.
I was disenchanted. I expected to find this loving group of people and this new family, and instead I found a bunch of scammers, and it was really disappointing. Because it had nothing to do with the music that the Dead was playing. It was like this entity unto its own that just followed the band around.
But for die-hard Deadheads, today's news was a shock.
A lot of lost souls, I think, gonna be wandering around.
For more than 30 years and almost 40 albums, Jerry Garcia was the Grateful Dead. Throughout it all, he played hard and lived hard, sidelined by diabetes and drug addiction. And it was in a drug treatment center that he died of a heart attack early this morning. Jeffrey Kaufman, CBC News, Washington.
Well, as if baby boomers needed another reminder that time is marching on, comes the news Jerry Garcia died today of an apparent heart attack. His death has been mourned by U.S. senators, Generation Xers, and even deadheads in cyberspace. At least one computer network is attributing a slowdown to Grateful Dead fans clogging up the system with messages to one another. CNN's Greg Lefebvre now on the message of the man and his music.
The Grateful Dead gave its fans a trip into the past. On news of Garcia's death, fans flocked to Golden Gate Park to play his music and remember. Country Joe McDonald played there too.
I'm getting depressed and I'm in shock over it. It's a very important end to something.
Yeah, Jerry was found dead this morning in his room.
Radio stations in Garcia's hometown played his music and consoled listeners, many of whom were grief-stricken by Garcia's passing.
I went through this in 1986 when Jerry went into his diabetic coma, and I was on the air at the time, and I found out that people needed a shoulder and a hand to hold. They had to review memories and talk about shows.
In the Haight-Ashbury district, where Garcia started, others gathered.
All his songs, everything was so positive.
Music is about how you can take a room full of people and turn them into one big spirit.
Counselors from a nearby crisis center worked the crowd quietly.
I urge all deadheads to grieve privately and with some style and some dignity in the way that Jerry would have wanted.
Fans went online, on the internet, on CompuServe. Fans on America Online displayed the icons for tears and hugs. Long an accomplished painter, Garcia opened a show of his own works. It came just a year after he was hospitalized for exhaustion.
A lot of effort to get healthy. Nothing like the threat of death to kind of get your attention.
Garcia's music mixed bluegrass, folk, rock, and country. He stayed true to the original themes throughout 3 decades of music.
Our generation has grown up to appreciate that rock and roll has changed with us, has moved with the times, and so there is still room for us for rock and roll. And the Grateful Dead is exemplary of that kind of a band that had always been beyond rock and roll, beyond faddism, beyond fashion.
Will the band continue to play? Their colleagues believe so. citing the band's anthem, "I Will Survive." Greg Lefebvre, CNN, San Francisco.
He was a man of many talents, even designed quite the ties. I've got a few of them hanging in my own closet. That's World News. I'm Lyndon Souls. Thank you for joining us. Coming up next, Sports Tonight. We leave you with another look. We leave you with another look at the music of Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, as Greg Lefebvre said, that will survive.
When they bring your way down, when they all drag your poor body down, things I ask of you, just one thing to say. Please forget you do my leg. My darling, shake it, sugary. Shake it, sugary. Don't tell 'em to me.
At K-Rock in New York City, veteran DJ Dave Herman began playing nothing but Grateful Dead music when the news was announced.
This is the classic rock station, 92.3 K-Rock.
The Grateful Dead are an example of how you can be at the very, very top for over a quarter of a century and do it completely on your own terms.
Indeed, the Grateful Dead were more than a rock band. To many, they were a way of life. But the band achieved success in an unusual way. In a career that spanned nearly 30 years, the Dead had only one top 10 hit, and their album sales were small compared to other top groups.
But record sales were not what this band was all about. It was the legendary live performances, like the many they gave here at Madison Square Garden, that kept the fans coming back for more. Indeed, this band was such a force in the concert industry that it might have more properly been called the Grateful Dead, Inc.
Thanks to incessant touring, the Grateful Dead were the #1 concert act between 1986 and 1995. Bringing in more than $297 million in that period. Not even the Rolling Stones brought in that kind of money. Will the band survive? One observer of the business says it's unlikely.
Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir, the guitar players and singers, are the key members of the group. And it's not likely that they would tour or even exist as the Grateful Dead without one of those two members.
That's likely to hurt concert promoters who have relied on the Dead for decades. But fans who have been mourning both on the air and online through the internet are likely to be hurt even more. Bob Pisani for NBC.